Good morning. Welcome to World News. Talks aimed at reaching a draft deal on Iran's nuclear program are continuing in Vienna, with diplomatic sources suggesting a breakthrough could be imminent. 6 world powers, including the United States and Russia, have been negotiating with Tehran about scaling down its nuclear activities in return for the lifting of economic sanctions. Well, the National Security Analyst Arash Aramesh joins me now live from Los Angeles. Arash, good to talk to you. We still don't know if there is a deal, but if an agreement has been struck, what's finally clinched it?
I think they've run out of time. That's what they have so far. All these sources that they've said negotiations have ended. Now, they have failed short of saying a full and comprehensive agreement has been reached. But I think the two sides, especially, the P5+1 and Iran, especially the United States and Iran, had already hashed out most of their differences over the course of the past month. These two sides have been negotiating now for a good 14 months. And in the last month, they really went at it, and they answered and resolved most of the difficulties, most of the issues, and most of the problems. Last minute, though, about a week ago, the Iranian side brought up an issue over weapons embargoes and arms embargoes, and that created a lot of tension. The U.S. was not willing to budge, and Iran was saying, you know what? These sanctions that were imposed in 2006 by the UN Security Council, reimposed in 2009, again by the UNSC, need to be removed, and that's been a sticking point since then.
So you mentioned there the arms embargo, but there's also been much speculation about the access that the Western nations and inspectors might now get to Iranian sites, military sites in particular.
The U.S. has always adamantly requested full access to military sites and the ability to be able to inspect any site that is deemed to be potentially used for nuclear purposes or nuclear enrichment or nuclear activities. On the other hand, Iran, especially hardline as Iran, that's the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, generals in the Revolutionary Guards, they have also been very, very adamantly against allowing access to these military sites. Why? Because they say this goes against Iranian national sovereignty and things of that, so on and so forth. I think a compromise has been reached. Again, we have to wait to see details of this agreement, but a compromise has to be reached or had to have been reached for Iran to save face, and also for the Western side to be able to say, listen, we can go in, we can verify, and then we can trust.
Arash, whilst the Iranians might be happy, and indeed the Western nations might be happy as well, one country that simply won't be is, of course, Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu already saying that no deal at any price should be cut with the Iranians. It does seem, though, that the Americans were determined to push this through at any cost. So what now of US-Israeli relations?
US-Israeli relations have always been very, very strong, but they have not been as strong since President Obama took office and since Benjamin Netanyahu became prime minister. President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu have not, let's put it this way, they have not had the best personal and political relationship with one another. This situation has been difficult. It has shown itself in various ways, from Netanyahu coming to U.S. Congress, giving a speech defying the White House, and on the other hand, President Obama putting the Israelis on a sort of an intelligence blockade and not sharing any intelligence on Iranian nuclear negotiations with them. So it has been a rough and tough relationship for the past few months. Now, Israel's position was Iran's nuclear program has to end, final stop, period. The American side knew that was not going to be realistic. So the American side said, listen, we're going to roll back Iran's program as much as we can for there to be a verifiable approach for us to be able to verify that its nuclear program, it's civilian and not military, and poses no threat to Israel. But again, the deal that will be announced tomorrow, I'm sure that the Office of the Prime Minister in Israel will have a major problem with it.
Arash, just finally now, could President Obama have significant trouble pushing this deal then through his own Congress?
Perhaps. And again, it comes down to the details of the deal. If the U.S. has made significant concessions on arms embargo, of course. If the U.S. has made significant concessions about inspections and access to facilities, Of course, and it's not just the Republican majority in the Senate and the House, but it's also a significant number of Democrats in both chambers who will have a tough time voting for a bill that will grant Iran, or voting for an agreement that will grant Iran to go down that path. Very quickly, though, we have 430 members in the House. You're going to need 290 to go over a sort of a veto-proof majority, and we have 100 senators. You're going to need 67 votes there. It's a very tough sell. But again, if the contents of this deal are okay, it's going to be easier for the president to convince enough members to stick with him and not override his veto. But if it's a bad deal, or if Congress perceives this to be a very bad deal, then we'll see how they can override presidential veto. But again, we have to wait and see what the details are. As we know, the devil is always in the details.
It certainly is. It'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. Arash Aramesh live for us there in Los Angeles. Thank you.